Hello, my name is Donna Igo and I'm an early years teacher here at Sacred Heart. The aim of this session is to look at reading and how we teach children to read here at Sacred Heart, but also about how we can support you and your child's learning at home. As an early years practitioner, the most important thing is to try and instill that love of reading amongst our children, but we know that we can't do that on our own. A child's success as a reader begins much earlier than that first day at school. In 1 year, a child typically spends 7,800 hours at home, whilst only 900 of those hours is actually spent at school. That tells us that although we can do what we do and we follow our schemes and teach our reading strategies, there's only so much we can do, and it's really important that we as parents and school work together in partnership to try and support one another on this journey. We know that language is really important when it comes to learning to read. We can't expect children to learn to read and write if they haven't got the basic language skills. And that's why we want to really encourage you as parents to chat to your children to develop that language. And that happens again from a very, very early age. It's encouraging play at home, using role play, playing games, I Spy with My Little Eye. Listening to audiobooks is great for trying to develop that imagination and those concentration skills. So language really is important. We also know that nursery rhymes are important when looking at learning to read. We'd really encourage you as parents to keep singing those songs, to teach children the basic nursery rhymes that we were probably taught when we were younger. You can see some examples here on the screen, but again, the ability to rhyme and alliteration will really help them when it comes to learning to read and write at school. We'd also love for children to be immersed in traditional stories and to have a real good bank of stories in their mind. Again, thinking back to when we were probably at school and we knew stories off by heart, The Three Little Pigs, Jack and the Beanstalk, Cinderella, all of those stories. It's really important that children are still immersed in those stories at home and to read them time and time again, or to tell them time and time again. And then hopefully the children will have learnt those stories so that they can actually tell them and reenact them when they come into school. We know that predominantly children spend more time at home with you as parents and that you are the main educators. It's really important that you try and build in that special time each day away from all those distractions where you can spend some time sharing a book, snuggling up at night and just reading a story. It's really important that you set the scene and that you try and make the children as excited as possible about those stories, using expression, talking about the pictures, getting them to guess or predict what might happen next in the story. You are a brilliant role model. It's important that you talk about what's happening, that you give children the chance to express what they like, what they didn't like, who their favourite character was. All of this will help to build children's story language, but also, again, that love of reading and storytelling. So how do we teach reading here at Sacred Heart? Well, reading really is central to everything we do here at school. We usually spend a considerable amount of time reading certain text. For example, we've just done Halloween, so we've looked at Room on the Broom, Meg and Mog, and we'll spend a lot of time sharing those stories so that children get to know those stories really well and get to know the patterns and the characters really, really well. We usually read these stories when the children are on the carpet, so whole class, and we will always introduce the title page, the author, the illustrator. We'll look on the back cover at the blurb. This is where we distinguish between fiction and non-fiction. We get the children to think about where the story is set and then to use their imagination about what might happen in the story. This is where we teach our reading strategies and how important it is that children use the pictures to tell the story, use their sounds. It's where we model how to read from left to right, pointing to each word. We use expression and try and bring the story to life. And we get the children to talk about their story and what they like, what they didn't like. So again, it's an opportunity here to teach those reading strategies. In addition to that, children do phonics every day. We follow a programme called Read, Write, Inc, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. But children, again, on a daily basis are given an opportunity to read words, green words, and then they progress on to the book that you can see on the page called Chip. These are partner books where children will work with a partner of a similar ability, and they'll model to each other and learn from each other. In addition to that, we have something called our home school learning. This is where, as a teacher and a class teacher and a teaching assistant, we aim to listen to children at least twice a week read on a one-to-one basis. Now, these books are predominantly from the Oxford Reading Tree scheme, but we do have other books as well. And these books are an opportunity really for children to apply some of the knowledge, some of their strategies that they've been taught, and actually put them into action. And these books are sent home and they are shared at home with you as parents. Now, we appreciate that we've sent books home recently that might be a little bit tricky for your children. They're quite wordy, and apologies for that. That's largely due to COVID. Unfortunately, a lot of our books went missing and didn't get returned. So we are in the process of ordering some new books, some first words that are much more appropriate. But in the meantime, don't let it put you off. Please spend that time with your child, share the title, look at the name of the author, look at the illustrations, get them to predict what the story might be about, model it yourself, read it yourself using expression, get them to predict, talk about what they liked, what they didn't like, and then perhaps they can have a go then at reading, remembering to use your finger as you point and encouraging the children to do that as well. It's very, very beneficial, even if those words are tricky. They're just tricky for now, but you know, this is a really valuable experience for the children. And what we need you to do as parents is we need you to comment in their reading diary so that we can tell whether they have accessed that book at home with you and whether they need a new book being issued. So that communication is really, really important. And I know lately we haven't really had that communication with parents, so we can't ask you enough to make sure that you do comment. Okay, so we use Read, Write, Inc. It's a commercial scheme to teach phonics written by a lady called Ruth Miskin. It's a fantastic scheme and it's widely used. And we definitely recommend that you purchase the phonics cards. They're roughly about £4 to £5. That is £4 to £5 from Amazon, and it's just a wonderful way of reinforcing what we're teaching here at school. Please don't use letter names at this stage. Some of our children have come in knowing the letter names, but that confuses them at this stage. It's really important that they just know what those letters represent and the sounds. And whilst we're teaching those sounds, it's really important that they're articulated correctly. So we're going to show a video now just to show how the sounds are broken down into stretchy sounds and bouncy sounds. Okay, so during phonics sessions, we teach children to distinguish between our green words and our red words. Green words are the words that can be decodable and they can use their sounds to try and work out a word. For example, mad, mad. Red words, on the other hand, are tricky words. Children are just taught these words and they have to learn them via sight and try and retain those words. In addition to that, the children are exposed to our little friend Fred, who is a frog, and he does lots and lots of Fred talk. Now, Fred talk is when you talk like a robot, you talk in pure sounds. So Fred doesn't talk like you and I, he needs help, and the children have to try and help him. So they listen really carefully and try and figure out what Fred is saying. So for example, we play games like Fred says it down. Fred says sit down. We want children to try and listen really carefully and tune in so that they can do this independently. This is a really important skill. And once they become familiar with this kind of talk, this oral blending, it means that the actual skill of reading and blending will become much more easier for them. And that's when we know children are ready to become readers. We're going to see Fred in action and hopefully this will make a little bit more sense to you. An absolutely fantastic resource that I can't recommend enough is something called Oxford Owl. It takes a few seconds to join. You just need an email and a password, and then it gives you access as parents to lots and lots of resources. But in particular, I love the ebooks. They're just a great way of bringing stories to life. It gives you a break as a parent and a chance for children, maybe they've got their iPad or the computer, to sit and actually listen. And there's some little activities as well that are always linked into the book to check for comprehension, because of course comprehension is really important. Children need to be able to read, but they also need to understand what they're actually reading. So there's some lovely activities tied into that. So yes, I'd definitely recommend Oxford Owl. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our reading workshop. Hopefully you found some of those ideas and strategies useful and you can put them into practice at home. But if there is anything that you need any extra work or support with, please don't hesitate to get in contact via our email. Thank you ever so much for tuning in, and I look forward to doing the next workshop, which will be on phonics. Thank you. Take care.